Hey everybody, it's Nick again, and today we're going to be talking about Power Pages caching. So, what is Power Pages caching? Just what is caching in general? And why is it so controversial? So, basically, caching in web applications refers to storing frequently accessed data in a location that's a little closer to the website. So, in a Power Pages point of view, as opposed to it going out to Dataverse to retrieve data to display on a list or a form, it's going to access data a little bit closer. So if that gets cached, not a problem, makes your website run faster. That's what we want. However, we also want our site to run fast, but sometimes we want the most up-to-date data. And this for new people configuring Power Pages for the first time, or even building a site, you begin to run into things going, wait a minute, the data is not updated. What do I mean by all this? Let's take a quick look. So this is a website I've set up. I have a list. It's showing event sessions. You may have seen me demo this before at various events. I see here is Introduction to the Power Platform. Learn the basics of Power Platform and capabilities. This is on a Power Pages site. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my model-driven app. And this is now on the Dataverse side. I can go in and I can make some edits here. I'm going to actually put in some extra text in here. I'm going to change the rating. We can change a few other things. I'm going to save and close this now. This record could have been updated by a plugin, a classic workflow, or just a regular flow, or some other data update procedure happening on the Dataverse side. This is not going to be reflected immediately on the Power Pages side. If I now go back and I do something as simple as a browser refresh, we see that that piece of text that I added did not show up. So this is what caching is all about. The data has been cached, meaning this is actually accessing data that's sitting in a holding place at a much closer to the website itself, as opposed to going back and querying Dataverse each and every time. Now, one interesting thing that I did see, now if I load a form for the first time and I have a drill down on this list, which navigates to another web page, I will see for the very first time, I will see that piece of text updated on my form. That's really cool. But if I were to go back into my model-driven app, and now I'm going to make a few more edits. I'm just going to get rid of this is a great session, sign up today, for example. Let's move this rating back down to 3 stars. I'm going to save and close this. If I now go back to my website here on this form, refreshing, and we see that those edits have not been made. So the very first time a form is loaded, it will go to Dataverse. The first time a list is loaded, it will go to Dataverse. If I were even to go back to that list here, we still don't see these updates from that original time. So this is what caching is all about. Now this, as you can see, this becomes a little bit problematic, especially if we're trying to retrieve data, if there are mission critical or business related things that we want this updated data. So we're going to get to some ways that we could get that, or more discussion on that. Now, let's talk about something else. That was from Dataverse going to the Power Pages website. What if I were to do some updates here on my Power Pages website? So let's go in here, and I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to basically say, this is a great session. This will sell out. Make some just quick little changes. We can even go in and change the rating here back down to a 2 maybe. Few other things, and I'm just going to submit this form. You'll notice now that it will navigate here. I've set it up to navigate back to the list, but it did automatically update the data. Same if I were to now drill down, if I were to take a look at that particular record, and we see that it's already been updated. So from the Power Pages website back to Dataverse, we don't have caching. Just keep that in mind, because we're going to maybe use that as a way to kind of trick the cache a little bit later on. So in that respect, so far so good. We understand how caching works. For the most time, we can live with it. Now, if we are doing development, so if I'm in the design studio and I'm making some changes into my website here, making some changes that might be data related, and I actually want to see what this looks like on my website with the most up-to-date changes. Again, if I just make a change here and then just simply do a refresh, those changes aren't going to reflect. What I do need to do is actually go into the preview here, click on desktop, and we see here it is refreshing my page, and this will basically go and refresh the cache in terms of this website. So that's one way to do it. Now, if you're building things, if you like to use the Power Pages management app, or you're using Visual Studio Code, or you're developing your portal using other methods but not using the Design Studio, well, then the other thing that you can do is, if you take a look, now that I'm in the Power Pages Management app anyway, take a look at this contact. I can make sure that this contact has the administrator's web role. If that logged in contact has the administrator's web role, I can go into my site and go into the extra URL _services about, and that means I'm going to see this new layout where I have this clear cache button. So this clear cache button basically allows me to also clear the cache. So a lot of times if I'm doing development but using primarily the Power Pages Management app or using Visual Studio Code, I can hit the clear cache in order to get the most up-to-date version of my website. All right, but thinking about that, what if it's more of a production level thing? We're working with business data. We need to see instant data being updated. We can't expect, first off, we can't just show our users this particular page, and we can't give them the administrator web role strictly just to clear the cache. That's a little bit problematic. So the question is, how can we, make this work so we always get the most up-to-date data? So the question comes up is there a way to programmatically clear the cache? Can we add that into our code? Is there an API? Is there a liquid tag? There isn't. I'm sorry. There is no way to programmatically in a supported way to clear the website cache for Power Pages. Now, so basically that's how caching works and how you can clear the cache. Now, when will the data get updated? This is the question. How long is it going to be stale like that? The service level agreement that Microsoft outlines on their website is a maximum of 15 minutes. So at max 15 minutes later, if I refresh the page, I should see the updates. In my experience, this goes maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes, but definitely not 15, but definitely not immediately either. So for a lot of cases, having kind of a 5-minute wait time for most situations is not really a big deal. You have to realize people are accessing data from Power Pages. When they open up their browser, it will pull in that, the most recent data. It's kind of when they're interacting a little bit. If the data is 15 minutes old, 15 minutes old, it's really not going to make a deal, because depending, most of the time there's not even processing happening on the Dataverse side. Now, where it does become a big deal is, yes, if you are doing something where you're maybe creating a bunch of sub-records, or you're updating a bunch of sub-records, and you actually want to see the updates of that immediately on your Power Pages website. So this is where the question comes up: is there a way programmatically to refresh the cache on Power Pages websites? Is there a liquid tag? Is there a web API? Is there a JavaScript function? Unfortunately, there's not. There is no supported way to programmatically clear the cache for Power Pages. There's not to say that there's a couple hacky methods that can be done in order to, get the Power Pages site to clear the cache. Now, I'm going to show you some code that you might want to use very sparingly, but there are ways to get around that. Now, the first one is to create a customized view. So let's take a look at some code to see what this is all about. One of the ways that's fairly well known on the internet, you'll find this, and I'm just going to explain it to you, is to create a custom view. Now, the nice thing about the out-of-the-box list form is it has a bunch of things. I can do sorting, different drill downs. I can do searching. I can add metadata searching. It has the automatic paging if I had more than a certain amount of records. It has a lot built into it. That's not to say you can't create a custom one. I did create a custom one here. I'll share that code. It's actually on the blog that accompanies this video. And basically, I've just created a very simple HTML table that is actually using a fetch XML query to Dataverse to pull this data. Now, there is something about that fetch XML query. Let's take a look at the code first. Well, first off, let's just see here. So learn the basics of Power Platform capabilities. This will sell out. Just to prove you that this works, I'm going to go into my model-driven app. Let's just get rid of this. This will sell out. Let's make the rating a full 5 stars. I'm going to save and close this record. All good. Now, going back to my Power Pages site, we know that if we were to do this on a list and do a refresh, as I demoed earlier, it would not update. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a quick little browser refresh, and boom, it updated automatically. How did it do that? Well, here's the trick. If I now go into the code for this particular thing, again, this code is on the accompanying blog. Basically, I've just created a very simple HTML table. There's the heading, and here's the fetch XML. For those of you who don't know what fetch XML is, it is a querying language for Dataverse. There is an XRM Toolbox tool, Fetch XML Builder by Jonas Rapp, a good friend of mine. You definitely need to get this tool if you're doing, even if you're doing other things with talking to the Dataverse Web API or doing any other kind of development. Fetch XML Builder is just truly indispensable. All that being said, this is a regular fetch statement. I'm returning records from my session table, but notice I've added this filter, and I'm just going to kind of highlight this. I'm doing the condition attribute created on, because we know every single Dataverse table has a created on column. Operator on or before the value of today, basically the value of right now. This is always going to return the records, but because we have this operator here, it is going to now basically tell the Power Pages website, because data has changed, because this particular value has changed. And remember, Liquid is interpreted on the server. So this is happening server side. It's basically saying, ooh, this data is probably different. I need to go back to Dataverse and retrieve it. So if it goes back to Dataverse, it's going to get the most up-to-date data. So the pros of this basically means that we're always going to get that refresh cache data. The cons of it is it could potentially slow down your website if you're using a lot of data. And then the other thing is you have to custom build that view, which you might be doing anyway for other reasons. I'll quickly go through the rest of this code. So it retrieves the data and then basically builds out this table. Now, the other little side note here, I've added a manifest here on the manifest tags. This basically allows me to add this as a custom component to the web page. So if I'm designing a brand new web page and I'm going to choose a component, because I added that manifest to that web template, and I do have another video on this, the links are in the blog post, I now can just add that as a custom component to my page, and then I can just go in and put in the title and some other details here. This is pretty straightforward. Web templates as components is a whole other topic. I did have a video, an older video on this. I might do an updated one because there's been some new changes, the fact we can add it from the design studio. But long story short, we've added this particular view, and this is something we can give over to our makers as well. And by doing so, going back to the portal website, we now have a way to show the most up-to-date data. So that's one way to do it, but of course you might be thinking, yeah, that's great, but I actually really need to use the out-of-the-box list. Definitely you can. It's got all these great features, but of course we don't have the way to trick the cache. I've gone in, I've tried to manipulate the actual fetch XML in the background, tried a bunch of different things to be able to apply this technique to this list. It doesn't quite work. Now, there is another method that's even more hacky. I do have a blog post that I did a couple years ago on this. Basically, remember when I told you that if we update data from the Power Pages website to Dataverse, we will get the most up-to-date data. So I do have this other thing here. It's Event Sessions Form Cache, and basically I do have a drill down here for the clear cache version. Let's see what this is all about. I basically can go in and same thing. I'm going to go into my websites here. I'm going to change this, put some text back here. That's all good. Let's save and close this. Now, if I were to go back to my website, and even if I did a refresh here, we don't see this has changed. However, what I have done is if I go to this clear cache version, we see a bit of a flash on a page here, and then we actually see the updated form out of the box form. So this is a way to kind of trick the Power Pages website to show me the most up-to-date data. And if I actually now go back to that list, it is actually showing me the most up-to-date data. So how did we do this? You did notice that when I drilled down here that it quickly went through an intermediate page and it kind of flashed on the screen and went away again. So basically what I've done is, let's go into the design studio and see how this trickery works. I have my page with my list, and I'm going to go in edit list, and if I look at my actions, I'm drilling down to a web page called clear cache, and this is like I said, I had the display label clear cache version. So it's going to go down. Let's take a look at it's in the other pages. I don't have this in my navigation. And I have this clear cache page with a custom component. So what this custom component has done is it's taken the GUID that's been passed by the list, it's going through and it's using the Portal Web API to write something back to the session table, thus making the Power Pages site write to Dataverse, which we know basically clears the cache, and then it's going to display it on the form. So let's take another step back. How did I create this custom component? Well, a couple things I need to do first. First off, within Power Apps, Dataverse itself in the table. I'm just using regular Power Apps here. Let's increase the size of this. I've added a new field. It's just a simple text field called cache. And you can call it whatever you want, just a straight line of text. This is what we're going to write using the Portal Web API. Now, if I were to take a look at the code for this, I'm going to go back, and I have a web template once again, called it clear cache. I've added it a site marker, and the site marker is going to be ultimately the form page I want to navigate to. Let's talk about site markers in a minute, but effectively just think of it as a shortcut. I'm getting the GUID passed as an ID. That's just how the standard lists work. I'm including the Portal Web API helper. If you've used the Power Pages Web API, you know that there is an Ajax helper script that either you incorporate in your script or you have as a separate place. I currently have this in another web template. I have some things here for troubleshooting about clearing the cache for the table and the GUID, those types of things. I'm going to show you how that works in a minute. And then I have basically a Portal's Web API function that's going to write to that cache field. It's going to write to that cache field, thus updating the record, and then by clearing the cache. And then after that, it's going to jump basically to that next window, which ultimately would have been our drill down window with that particular GUID. And then we also have a manifest because once again, I want to add this as a component to a page. There's a lot there. The blog explains it fairly well. It's got all the code there as well, so you can take a look for yourself. The other thing, of course, that we need to do is within the Power Pages management app, because it's using the Portal Web API, I do need to set up some site settings. So I've set the docs session, I've set it to enabled for true, I've set the docs cache field to be writable. That type of thing, we'll need to set that up. Of course, we also need to set up our site marker. Again, if you've not used site markers before, they're pretty cool. This is the drill down page we're going to send it to. So here's this edit session, and basically that's the name of the site marker, and this is the page that ultimately I'm going to drill down to. That's what's going to pass the GUID as well too. So again, a lot of stuff happening here. And then of course we did show the code here already where I have this manifest. So I've got all this stuff. It is on the blog site. So basically what that means is if I go into, I'm just going to go to this test page again, for example, and here you see I have my clear cache component. I'm going to add this. And then through the editing the custom components, because this is the cool thing about the manifest, I can put in the Dataverse table set entity name, which in our case would have been docs session. Now, because it's entity set, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be pluralized. So be careful of that. A great tool is the Dataverse REST builder to determine these types of things. Here's the cache field logical name. So that was docs cache. And of course the site marker name, which I think was event sessions. So I've set this up so this can be a reusable component, but you still need to do a lot of extra work. So all of that being said, I've set this up. Now the other thing that we do need to set up, and this is where it could become a bit of a showstopper, is we do also need to set up table permissions. So I've set up a table permission for the website sessions because we do need to give update rights. Now I've even gone so bold to set this up for anonymous users and authenticated users. I think in your particular use case, you could probably narrow this down to particular web roles and that type of thing to make sure that it is very much protected. But at the end of the day, you do need external users to be able to write to that record in order for this technique to work. Like I said, this information is on the blog post, but I know some of you are more visual with the video, so that's why I'm kind of pointing this out here. Hopefully everything works together and you can figure this out if you choose to do this method. Like I said, it is quite hacky. It's probably not exact. It's supported because we're using supported things, but probably not best practices. Let's put it at that. Anyways, once we've configured all this and we've actually added our page and we have our drill down page, we have our destination page, then sure enough, we can actually go through and basically know that anytime we update information, it is going to show up immediately on our Power Pages website. I've showed you 2 hacky methods in order to clear the cache. The other thing that I don't actually have a demo set up here for is the use of multi-step forms. Multi-step forms allows you to enter information on a step-by-step basis. This also will ensure that the cache is updated on your Power Pages site. So I found that within the step, I could create a step where it creates a record. It could run a plugin or a flow or anything on the Dataverse side. And then I go to step 2, I will automatically see that step in step 2. So just keep that in mind, that that's one way to kind of clear the cache. So I've given you a lot of extra information. This video is probably running a little bit longer. It's very technical. Do read the accompanying blog post. If you do have questions, either leave a comment on the video or on the blog post itself. Overall, these are methods that should be used as an absolute last resort. I would try to keep things as simple as possible. Do question if you do actually need to have this transactional information appear on your Power Pages website immediately. If you're developing, of course, just stick with the regular clear cache button or the running the preview button, that type of thing. Use multi-step forms. But also, if you're wondering how caching works, I also hope that the video explained how caching works on Power Pages. It is a big topic. There's a lot of controversy. I know my good friend Nicholas Hayduke likes to post a lot of memes about Power Pages caching. I have a couple examples on the blog post as well. Check those out. Hope you enjoyed this video. I have plenty more ideas, plenty more videos coming this year. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.